It's good to be able to clarify a rumour that went round. I had heard that the government took this bill off Mr Bridges because they didn't think he was quite ready to take this bill through the passage of the House. But so they gave it to Mr Carter, who the Minister of Agriculture and sometime Minister of Forestry. But if I'm wrong, and it's not the reason they took the bill up you, Mr Bridges, then I apologise, because I thought that was the reason. And to anyone else who thought that was the reason, then it's obviously not right at all. But I must admit, I did hear Mr Bridges speak on national radio about this bill when it was introduced. And I thought he spoke okay, not as well as he does on television. He was okay, but then again, it's very difficult to sound bad when you're talking about a bill that addresses the serious issue of animal cruelty. There was one thing I would disagree with Mr Bridges on, because obviously we're all supporting this bill, but there's one thing I would disagree with Mr Bridges on. He said that this bill represents Parliament at its best. Now, well, we all agree on this, but I think Parliament's at its best when it's sort of dealing with the issues that affect New Zealanders, poor New Zealanders, and when $8 million for animal cruelty, that's great, but how about $13 million for adult community education courses? I think that would have gone a long way to really to alleviating the problems, some of the problems we've got in society. One of the points that I would like to bring up, and it's following on from my colleague Carol Beaumont's point, that animal cruelty, well, there's often a very strong link with animal cruelty leading to other forms of much more insidious types of cruelty. And I'd like to read something. Tackling animal cruelty can have, obviously, as we know, it can have a beneficial impact upon society, which is the reason why we're passing this bill, of course. But there is a very strong link between cruelty treatment of animals developing into abuse of humans. And a 1997 survey showed, well, this is by the Humane Society of the United States, showed that 50 of the largest shelters for battered women in the United States found that 85% of women and 63% of children entering shelters discuss incidents of pet abuse in the family. Now that's a pretty insidious statistic, actually, and we all hear these stats around Guy Fawkes Night, for example, where wayward children or misinformed children or whatever have attached firecrackers to animals or cruelty to animals, and it's just dreadful. So it is time to send a very, very clear message, I think, to New Zealand. It's one of the things that Parliament can do by passing such legislation. I am aware that only 10 people have gone to jail and the incidence of successful prosecutions are actually quite low, but by passing a bill like this, it sends a very clear message that society will just not tolerate this type of behaviour any longer. It is unacceptable. Now, the main aim of this bill is obviously to amend the Animal Welfare Act 1999, but it does introduce a new offence, and it's called reckless cruelty to animals. Now, what does reckless cruelty actually mean? It means you recklessly ill-treat an animal if you treat an animal that results in the animal is permanently disabled, or the animal dies, or the pain or distress caused. This is, by the way, section 28A of the bill. The pain or distress caused the animal is so great that it's necessary to destroy the animal or to end its suffering, or the animal is seriously injured or impaired. Now, it's a sad indictment of society that we actually are passing a bill like this in the first place. Sue Kedgley talked about cruelty to farm animals, as did Carol Beaumont as well, and I think that people can differentiate between farm animals and family pets. However, I also believe that pictures of cruelty flashed across our TV screens of any type of animals draw sort of gasps of horror from ordinary New Zealanders, whether it's an emaciated cow or a horse that's come from a Crayford farm, or it's a dog that's been fed a bunch of kittens. It is just something that sort of strikes a nerve with New Zealanders, and it's just downright insidious. I mean, a pet is part of a family. Let's be honest about this, and some people have stood up and talked about their pets. Well, my partner's cat, Mozzarella, this cat, Sarah's cat, gets treated better than I do at times. It eats steak. I get mince, Mozzarella gets steak, and there is no doubt who rules the couch, if not the roost, in our house. And I know when occasionally these pictures of animal cruelty are flashed up on the... Yeah, I am jealous. I am, occasionally. But when these things are flashed up, Sarah just turns right off. My daughter, who's 8-year-old, she just looks at them and says, "How can anyone do that, Daddy?" Mr. Chair...
Moana Mackie.